PTV, oberoende, piratistisk media, skapad och finansierad av tittarna.
Vad är det där?
Det är ett skränkverktyg, så det använder man när man skränker sågar.
Vad är det för något?
Ja, det är lite svårt att förklara. Så det...
PTV av statarjävlar för statarjävlar.
We go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of PTV International, Interglobal, as it's currently semi-called. Let's have a little. I need to check one thing. There we go. Beautiful. Great. How are you today, Maya?
I'm fine. My camera might be frozen though.
Yeah, I'll just move that a little bit, and then there we go. Sweet. Perfect. Now we're all set up, and unfortunately I have the Myras chat running behind. Shilulu liminal. Unfortunately, that's our new greeting on the channel. It's a Persian Swedish greeting, apparently. We're learning new things. We're learning new things every day. It sounds very similar to Wolulu, like yeah, that sound.
Yeah, Age of Empires.
Yeah.
Classic. We are doing conversion here, after all, so it's very appropriate.
Yeah, that's true. This is conversion therapy. I hope you're all ready.
Thematic.
You're gonna become crazy communist climate fighters, all of you. Like all of them. Blocking roads and going crazy, right? Nuts. They're destroying the country in Finland, apparently. Or what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to go into that first?
I think we could. I think we can, right? I think this is. I mean, here we can talk.
A lot of old news from just the missed streams from a week or two ago. So might as well start with the actual breaking stuff.
Yeah, and particularly since you're involved in this, so you have a great perspective on this as well, right? So this is the
English one is the basics that we can go through, and you can read it out loud if you want. And the Finnish one have some video.
Ah, okay, cool.
So this was earlier today. It started at around 6 p.m. in the city center in Helsinki.
I think it's exactly. I'll read this one. Climate activists begin 10-day protest in downtown Helsinki. The estimated 1,000 protesters are calling on Finland's government to declare a climate environmental emergency. A climate protest organized by the Finnish branch of the global environmental movement Extinction Rebellion. Elokapina. Was that good?
Yeah, a localized brand for it, since Extinction Rebellion is kind of a mouthful, especially for native Finnish speakers. So
it's it's a name. Began on Wednesday evening on Helsinki's main thoroughfare Mannerheimintie. My Finnish is the August Rebellion. Okay, yeah, that sounds Mannerheim. Okay, the August Rebellion, or oh my God, are they gonna have so many? The August Rebellion or Syskapina.
Yeah, Autumn Rebellion.
Yeah,
they actually.
How do you say two Y's?
Syskapina. It's just a long Y.
Syskapina. Oh yeah, you say Y like that. Okay. It's calling on Finland's government to declare a climate environmental emergency and to create binding legislation that will achieve carbon neutrality by 2025. A decade ahead of the government's current goal of 2035. And let's also say the only plan that actually meets the IPCC's report on that we absolutely need to stop this now, because 5 years ahead, like if we haven't reversed this in 5 years' time, it's going to be a bad ride. Anyway, the organizers have indicated that the demonstration may last up to 10 days or until Friday, 8th of October, with police warning that the protest could cause significant disruption to traffic, as there are estimated 1,000 protesters involved. Speaking to Yle's Uusimaa regional news bulletin on Wednesday evening, shortly after the demonstration began, Helsinki Police Superintendent Jarmo Heinonen said the police have ordered the organizers to end the event. The police have now ordered an end to the demonstration. Insofar, we have considered this to be a legal demonstration. Now there's a crowd here that, from the police point of view, should not be there, and our job is to somehow disperse that crowd in some way. Wow, this is really vague, all of it, but yeah. Prior to the beginning of the protest, Helsinki police chief Heikki Parola told Yle that the police had asked organizers to move the demonstration to Kansalastori Square, where there would be less disruption to city center traffic, but the request was refused. Parola added that the police do not intend to allow the protesters to remain on traffic lanes. If we can move the demonstration to the footpath, for instance, the demonstration may continue. When there is an unreasonable inconvenience to traffic, we cannot allow the demonstration to continue because it does not comply with the Assembly Act, he said. Extinction Rebellion activist Elon Sloan told Yle that the protesters refused the police request because the demonstration is intended to cause disruption. Well, which is a pretty good reason. That is its purpose, and it's reasonable in relation to the thing we're demanding. If we are at the Kansalastori Square shouting in our case, it wouldn't get the same media attention as we're getting now. True. We want to be in a place where politicians cannot bypass us. We are living in a climate crisis. Either we act as a society, take responsibility for this, or this descends into chaos. We don't want that. I want to think there is still hope. Earlier in the day, Finnish politicians from both government and opposition parties had criticized the movement's plans to disrupt traffic in the capital for up to 10 days. The opposition National Coalition Party, Vice Chair Antti Häkkinen, that I think we have been talking a little bit about, stated that everyone has a right to protest, but not in any location under any conditions. Other people have the right to live a normal life, to go to work, daycare and hobbies, and enjoy freedom in movement. In other words, no one has the right to unreasonably infringe on the right of others. Among the government's coalition parties, MPs from both the Social Democratic Party and the Central told Yle that they disapprove of the group's protest methods. There are many ways in Finland to express an opinion other than by blocking the traffic. Blah, 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 blah. Li Andersson, chair of the coalition party in the Left Alliance, told Yle that she was too busy to be interviewed about the protests, but her party colleague MP Mai Kivela said the protesters have a right to demonstrate. Demonstration is a civil right guaranteed by the Constitution. If it's a matter of peaceful civil disobedience, then that is part of democracy. And the president said something. Yeah, they seem basically everyone apart from that then mostly in agreement that this protest is horribly wrong, or at least no good. Oh, you're probably muted.
Am I?
Yeah, now there we go. Now we can hear you again. Now you're...
Am I still...
No. Now I hear you. It's weird. Maybe it's... Anyhow, what's going on here?
So, Syskopina is supposed to last for 10 days, and they made their intentions pretty clear. The gist of the plan, I guess, was already announced or came up last week, and ever since the media has been all over it, and people on social media have been really mad about it. This isn't the first time the Finnish XR is blocking roads. They had a similar effort this summer, and there have been some like shorter instances that also got some attention earlier this year and also last year. There was a one in particular that sort of kickstarted the awareness of the movement here last November or maybe October, when some of them sat down at a far less intensively trafficked street, also close to the city center in Helsinki, and there was video caught of a police officer just walking to some really young people just sitting down there peacefully, absolutely no threat, no confusion at all. The police officer just walked up to them and sprayed them in the face with pepper gas, I think.
Yeah. But this was filmed, right? No?
Yeah. There is... This time around, it was a huge spectacle. Like, this is the most they've made out of it. Pretty much every major Finnish media was there, and I think we have some footage from Yle.
Yeah, we could have a little bit of a look, yeah, to get an overview.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. I mean, and this was kind of global effort, right?
The movement is global, but they don't actually get people from abroad for. This is fairly routine.
Yeah.
There was a major Nordic event, I think, in Norway sometime earlier, maybe like late summer. I don't actually know much about that one, but that one had people from all over Nordics.
Yeah.
But this is all Finnish, mostly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty good. Like in Sweden, where all of this started, I'm sure they're still going. I know that they were supposed to start up last Friday. Actually, was it this Friday? But it's just not making any sort of noise in the news.
So do you have Extinction Rebellion there as well, or just climate people in general?
I think that's Fridays for Future still. That's here.
Yeah, I mean, Fridays for Future is the thing here as well. And last Friday was the global climate strike. But Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion are two different things.
Yeah.
The methods are different, but there is a lot of common ground, I guess, on the general demands.
Yeah. What would you say like is different then in the methods? A little bit more hardcore in the Extinction. That is a name, Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, Friday started out as mainly a youth thing and school strikes, but after that there's been like Parents for Future popped out in several countries. Then there's been like, say, Doctors for Future or Academics for Future or Lawyers for Future. Or I also saw Museums for Future this time around. So it's been taken on by many different people. And it was mainly the strikes, like the regular Friday strikes are still happening all over. And yeah, the ones that were started by Greta Thunberg, they're in Sweden. And then there's these major global strike days. Usually used to be twice a year, but now they're trying to make them more frequent. So there's another coming up in just a few weeks, in late October. That one's been announced.
Well, that's good. That one we will hopefully film on location to see if there is something. Because in Sweden, this doesn't get any news coverage whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that the whole climate activism topic got oversaturated by Greta at some point, and then people haven't been able to give a fuck.
No, I think the Greta,
Or what is it?
it just doesn't generate enough clicks. I think. I mean, people and I think that the way that it's being handled in media is always following, and it was a news about Greta today when she's having some comments about stuff. So that always makes a front page. Whenever she says something, that's plastered. But like the movement is, I'm not going to say dead, it's alive. But yeah, that's just not what media is interested to talk about. Greta is enough of a controversial figure that you're going to have half of the population hating her and half thinking it's really good. And it's going to generate just a shitload of click and that sort of circle mania, you know?
That's how it started, really. And that's the same thing that's powering the outrage and the media attention on Extinction Rebellion here in Finland as well. People getting upset. You don't get a phenomenon just by some people deciding to do something. You need both the media attention and also people who are upset enough that the media can draw this like really delicious controversy or a narrative with two clear sides.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily, it's the media who cements this divide usually. They create the phenomenon, and they are really, at least in Finland, they are really like blasé about it, I guess. They try to say, their official stance is always that they just pay attention and report on what people find interesting, and what is generating conversation, and really like distancing themselves from the obvious responsibility and role they have in creating any phenomenon, any of this.
No.
The only reason we had, the reason school strikes became such a thing a couple of years ago, it's had a lot to do with Greta, not just as a figure, but just the reaction to her, the counter reaction, and then reaction to the counter reaction. That's what fed it. And it was the same here. We had the same moral panic about kids skipping school, and is this ruining their futures? Have they been brainwashed? And now with XR, it's just the same upset, since many of the activists are quite young. There are many underage people getting themselves caught as part of the block. And it's kind of a similar discussion, but it's even more extreme, especially on the part of the criticizers or the people opposing this. In the summer, we had people literally calling for the protesters to just be driven over on social media and being branded as some brainwashed communist traitors to the country or something. Like, this is the level that the people opposing these protests operated.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, that's the law in several US states now. They've changed that after the BLM. I mean, if the BLM protest achieved anything, it's that you can now drive over protesters. I think that's, it's a little bit, it has achieved soft values, but in terms of legislation, that's it. That's it. It's quite funny.
NMR?
That's a Swedish right-wing party. Nazi. But yeah, like I don't know. It's so. I was watching this. I was watching something similar on Reddit, and it's like I'm always so surprised when I mean that counter reaction. Then when they're screaming at the news, why do you publish this? And you're like, you're clicking it, bro. Like, how can you not? How don't you fucking understand how this works? How can you be upset with the media, calling them X, Y, and Z? They're a capitalist company. They're gonna publish news that you click and feel upset about. That's how your brain is fucking wired. Like, the outrage on the media is in itself a way for them to generate clicks. Like and I mean that's gonna be the demise of our, you know, quote unquote liberal capitalistic media. Is they're eating their own tail. They're feeding off that outrage.
Yep. Just today, I was there observing it for a few hours, and also saying hi to some people I know who are more or less involved in it. Who, like, there was a counter protest. You could hear it at some point on the video. Some people blasting ridiculous decibels, just some music to disturb the protest, basically. And on that side of the road, I saw someone with a sign saying, "Why does the media give preferential treatment to XR?" And I mean, you're answering your own question there. It's because you're that upset. You're helping this happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're a part of a completely ridiculous, overblown, counter-moral outrage that clicks this shit like a fucking baby, and like it's so sad.
They're framing this as an attack towards Finnish society and the authorities, everything that is good and proper. This kind of ties into. I've heard some people say that it's kind of the same in Sweden, or there's a similar discourse.
Oh, absolutely.
On private cars, basically. Just people owning cars and driving them, and about the government making their lives difficult by doing something about the climate. So cars are very much a matter of identity politics nowadays, and tied to the climate. So this is like an extra layer of upset when they are blocking the cars from moving around. And this seriously, this is one of the major, most central roads in Helsinki, but it's not the only route.
No, I mean, it looks like you can just drive around this. Like, I mean, how fucking difficult is it to go to? I mean, it's a city.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, oh, they're on on one of the highways that are leading in. Like, this is gonna block traffic. Like, oh my god, this is just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, it just.
I don't know. And I think media is always going to win. You know that. I mean, the problem is, or rather, the way that this works and is tilted, it's just going to play in the favor of the powerful, right? I mean, that's the biggest problem, I think. I mean, I don't see how you can get around that problem. It's just going to generate more click, and the framing is always going to be, why are they getting space in the media? They are the media control, and you know it's such a circular argument. It's extremely hard to break.
Yeah, I just realized we kind of drifted off at the question of methods. So
yeah,
the idea of XR, it's actually surprisingly academic or scientific. There was this collective, I think, of like Anglo academics who actually did some like theoretical work on how societies change, how like major societal change happens. And there are some principles there that were used to build like the operating principles and also the goals of the XR movement. So some of them, those are have been discredited or can be discredited, but the basic idea is non-violent civic resistance.
Yeah,
that's it. Like you don't hurt anyone. You don't even like do sabotage. You just cause a commotion. You just make people notice that you're protesting. That's it. Like that's as radical as these people get.
Yeah.
And still the reaction is like this.
I mean, this is hyper pacifist in its approach. I mean, you can kind of, like, from what I can see, like, these protests are probably the nicest. I don't know, like, how you can, I mean.
This is being treated as the end of the world and something, downfall of the civilization or something.
I mean, it's kind of funny. People are saying, hey, we need more ambitious climate goals. Look at IPCC. Look at what the scientists are saying. This isn't enough. We need to change, and it's your job to change it. And people are like, oh, look at them. They're fucking nuts. They have it so far removed from reality. And the outrage is like that these communist crazy people exist. That's the end of the world. That's the problem. I mean, it's
the funny thing is that these people are they are trying to brand the protesters as communists or left Greens or whatever buzzword they can dig up. But at this protest, the counter-protesters were the ones blasting like 1930s right-wing fascist or fascist-adjacent tracks from the other side of the road, basically. And also some just German stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, exactly. Also from last century, I think. So the protesters really weren't the ones doing like ideological callbacks to the 20th century.
No, but I mean...
So it's...
I think that...
weird.
Yeah. And it's funny how media is kind of amplifying this just for clicks or whatever, you know, like at a certain point, because, I mean, what's essentially happening, and you can see that all over the world, is that anyone who is actually advocating for any sort of change on these regards is branded as, you know, whatever, communist, and, you know, the universities are left-leaning. I mean, all of this stuff is typical fascist talking points, you know, and you would at least behoove the media to maybe not amplify that sort of reactions. But I mean, I guess, you know, if you're making money, then why not? Like, I don't know how their thinking is sometimes when they report on this sort of stuff.
This has been a successful, like, since the school strikes a couple of years ago, these roadblocks they've organized have been the most successful climate activist initiatives we've seen here since the pandemic hit. Like they get the media to notice, and the media also writes about their demands and climate in
that's
general.
good though.
So they are accomplishing what they are setting out to do. Even though their demands haven't been met, there is more focus on the climate.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
That's another count against the critics, I guess, since they keep saying that like this isn't helping anyone, that they're just making people opposed to climate action.
Yeah, and I don't think it makes people opposed to it. But what I find so interesting is that people who think this is a sign of society collapsing, and that who also would be like, and our left-wing government, everyone, the universities, everything is like conspiring against our, you know, pure society kind of like way of thinking. Like how that is manifesting on the outskirts, like you're saying, on the, I mean, it's kind of a central tendency, but how it like gets emboldened by this, and how they can say that society shouldn't change, no one should protest, no one, like it's that sort of complete ideologically based authoritative thinking,
that's not
right?
what they're saying. They're not saying that nobody should protest. What they're saying here is that they're doing it the wrong way. It's
like
usually people who definitely don't give a shit about the climate, or at least sufficient like policy goals, going, this is counterproductive, this is not the right way to go about things. It's the usual pattern. It's people who don't give a fuck now suddenly giving a fuck about whether this is a productive and optimal way to accomplish something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but you're taking, like I'm talking maybe a little bit more about the more extreme anti-ways this can be framed, like, because that would be, I would say, the typical liberal. You know, that we've had a discussion so many times here, and someone will come in and say, "Well, what about China? It doesn't matter what we do." And you go, like, based on what? And then the moment you start going through, I mean, it's just like, And everything you could potentially do will just, any sort of change is a negative change, because obviously that's not, and they have no solutions. Like when you ask them, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah, there are whole bingo sheets going about of these usual arguments that they go through.
Yeah.
Usually you just have to recognize that some of them aren't going about in good faith and just stop engaging with them. Since even if you debunk an argument or counter an argument successfully, they just move on to the next one. Usually, why aren't you protesting in China? Why are you doing this? None of this matters. There's always sort of another place to place your goalposts, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's good. I mean, I'm happy this is starting up again. I mean, and it needs to become more. And these sort of protests always have to be pacifist in its nature. I'm absolutely not advocating for anything else, or trying to think of strategy. I mean, but it's such an interesting discussion in today's media landscape and in today's reactionary type of political opponents who are often merging. Like you have this extreme counter protesters, rather counter movements, and they're not really counter to that extent, but that also merging with a liberal way of thinking in many ways.
Yeah, basically all they have to say about this is no, not like this, don't do this.
Yeah.
They have no interest in the discussion, in the actual theme. They have no interest in engaging. They're just here for the culture war, basically.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see the merge with power when power really is this communist. They will also quickly say that everything is already communist, and like you said, this is like the protesters are the problem, and they get media attention. Like how they switch that sort of don't do anything against the government, and the government is all like you know what I mean. I find that. I find it so interesting to hear how some of these people argue.
Yeah, and currently according to these people, we have a communist government.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, these protesters are communists. So you can just see them everywhere.
And protesting against the government is futile. That's not helpful. Like it's funny. But yeah, it normally ends, and what I find, it's just that, well, what's your solution? And then listening to what they're not saying, because they typically they won't say. It's just sad. Anyway,
there was one detail, I guess, from the article about the demand to get the carbon neutrality deadline to 2025. So one of the old leftovers we have on the Trello, the IPCC leaks are actually related to that.
Yeah. I think this is more of a summary. Yeah.
There was a leak around a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago at this point. Yeah, 2025.
Yeah. So, I mean,
when the emissions are supposed to start going down, like...
Yeah. I mean...
They can't go beyond that point globally.
And I think this is what... the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, released the first section of its 3-part 6 assessment report that fundamentally warns global greenhouse gas emissions have to peak within the next 4 years to prevent climate breakdown. So 2026 we need to peak, which is essentially, this is what, like most of these protests are saying, do the job that you need to do. Like it's not, this is just the minimum things that are being requested. It's not 2035. It's not, that's not where we are right now. That's not where the scientific community is. That's where no one is.
And
you know,
this is new.
Exactly.
Things that we've known, and scientists are getting a bit emboldened, like seeing all the inaction. They start trying to say things more clearly in the reports. The reason that there was a leak is that the people working on the report were concerned about the conclusions being watered down once it goes through the so-called political phase of the process. Like when the representatives of states basically get to have their say on how things are put in the report.
I mean,
they have fairly clear advice on what needs to be done and how important it's to have a just transition and to pay attention to the differences in the way the crisis affects different parts of the world.
Yeah. I can read. This is a pretty good summary, I guess. Point-based.
Sure, go ahead.
On August the 9th, the International Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, released the first section of its three-part sixth assessment report, with the rest to be published in 2022. The first part of the landmark climate report was a code red for humanity. Once that global temperatures is very likely to rise 1.5 degrees centigrades above pre-industrial levels by 2040. Scientists unanimously agree. So, I gotta kind of read that again. There's a lot of different people working on this.
Question in chat about what we're on about. So we just talked about some climate activism that happened today in Finland, and then are kind of segueing into the leaks of the third part of the IPCC report that came out last month.
1.5 degrees centigrade is above pre-industrial levels. Scientists unanimously agree it is unequivocal that humans have caused climate change. Also known as the sixth assessment report, the climate study is divided into three parts: the physical science of climate change, the impacts of climate change, the mitigation of the climate crisis. In a leaked draft, the third part of the IPCC report, which is not expected to be published before March 2022, warns global greenhouse gas emissions have to peak within the next 4 years, like we said, to prevent a climate breakdown. And climate breakdown, we could actually go through more of what that means later. But the draft report was leaked by a small group of scientists to the Spanish branch of Scientist Rebellion, an offshoot of the Extinction Rebellion that we just talked about, and was published by journalist Juan Bordera in the Spanish online magazine. The motivation behind the leak stems from concerns by some of the authors that their conclusion could be watered down prior to its 2022 publications, and this would be not a scientific watering down, but a political watering down, since this is going through a lot of politicizing. Aside from global carbon peaking in the next 4 years, developed and high-income countries must take charge and be aggressive in the climate action to reduce carbon emissions. Currently, the top 10% of global emitters are contributing between 36 and 45% of emissions, which is 10 times as much as the poorest 10%, responsible for only about 3 to 5%. The world needs to halve emissions in the next decade to stay within 1.5 degrees centigrade and reach net zero emissions by 2050. Net zero emissions by 2050. Lifestyle and diet changes will be instrumental in combating global warming, from refraining from overheating or overcooling homes to switching to a plant-based diet, which the report estimates can reduce emissions by up to 50% compared to the average emission-intensive Western diet. There should be no new coal-fired and fossil fuel power plants constructed or developed. Why do they get into fossil fuel particularly here? Coal-fired. Oh, God, of course they do. There should be no coal-fired and fossil fuel power plants constructed or developed from this moment onwards if the world wishes to stay within 1.5 degrees centigrade of global temperature increase. Investment to help global economy transitioning to a green economy is also sorely lacking. The rate of development for carbon capture and storage technology is relatively slow. The world needs to kick it up a notch in carbon capture, which has the potential to play a major role in reducing carbon emissions. Solar and wind energy and battery technology are now far cheaper, making renewable energy our sole energy generation is economically achievable. Greater and stronger conservation and protection policies of the world's forests and mangrove ecosystem, as they are important natural carbon sinks. Exactly. That's quite important. We don't want any political party or voice typically to be silenced, by the way, but that's really not what we're on about. It's actually pretty
Are
good.
these guys referring to the Nordic resistance movement?
Yeah.
The acronym?
Yeah, Wong said that NMR is classified.
Where that's not even a party. They're like they're extra parliamentary. Like that's their MO. So
Yeah, it never.
their organization in Finland was an association, not a party, and they weren't aiming to be a party. Since if I'm thinking about the right bunch, they aim for the violent overthrow of the current system, and they're not interested in doing it parliamentarily. So yeah, and that one was forbidden here by the courts, and the practical reason not to, I mean, they just founded new ones and they have to keep playing whack-a-mole. So it's kind of impractical to go at them through the courts. But there's also the argument to be made that through making go through the courts and getting these verdicts, you're setting norms against this kind of shit. So there are decent arguments both for and against.
That's actually a pretty good summary, though. I mean, this is
yeah, circulate this far and wide.
Yeah,
Since I just like coming home. Some of the people who live in the other tenants in the house, like I talked to them, and one of them said like everyone knows that climate is a thing or climate is an issue. Like everyone knows that something needs to be done. Like it's not about awareness, but I mean it clearly is, since if people actually knew this stuff and processed it, they wouldn't be living their lives like they are right now.
No, it's and it, also kind of what's the most frustrating thing is how this is completely gridlocked when actually making those changes. Like, I mean, if we take this one, the rate of development of carbon capture and storage technology is relatively slow. Imagine if we just spent half of what's spent on NATO. I mean, not even that, like 1% of the global military budget on this. A lot of these things could be solved. A lot of power plants could be built. This isn't this is not an unsolvable problem. The main issue is that you're having large powers and large companies that, for whatever reason, isn't interested in this, and they're really whipping up people onto just being completely against something. You know, it's the same thing as the oil lobby did against nuclear early, or the tobacco industry did. It's the same thing. I mean, this has happened before, and then you have all of these, the free market, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what the fuck, bro? What are you even talking about? Like, there is a lot of investments that could be done into this, and it's a lot of things that we could do that that could help reduce that are practically and economically doable. But
informed this Leif GG person in chat that this channel is typically pretty left-leaning, but you happen to join during the 2 hours per week that we don't speak Swedish here. So sorry about that.
He's normal here and argues with us in Swedish.
But yeah, we could talk about climate for the rest of the night, since it's always topical, and yeah, God, the market solutionists and the techno optimists. I just every day, daily discussions.
Yeah, I understand. maybe we could jump into other news. It must have been, yeah. I mean, you've also been working a lot with this last few weeks. I can imagine a bit of fatigue on this issue. Yeah, Leifky person, if you want to, Leifky person, if you want to find other ones, I mean, follow Vartuben and check. Okay, what you do is you go here. All of these are. You go to our Reddit, and if you scroll down here, René Assange, nice. If you scroll down here, you'll see other creators who are Swedish. I mean, from your perspective, left wing, definitely. Right here. There is a couple of Discords, but you know, if you start by checking out their channels, you will get to their Discords. It's not secret Discords. There is a couple. There is Arbetarrörelsen. You can also find Arbetarrörelsen on Reddit. They have their own Discord as well. Good shit. Let's talk. Oh my God, there's a lot of horrible news. Should we take something maybe a little bit positive?
I don't know. Elections, that's pretty run of the mill.
Yeah, this is good. This is, I guess, this is a very neutral election result as well, even though it's kind of fucked up. Some Iceland stuff.
Yeah. So Iceland had their general election last weekend. Pirates may be aware, but otherwise it probably got overshadowed pretty heavily by the German election, for understandable reasons, at least in most of Europe. And apparently this is the main angle that most international media have latched onto. They almost had a majority female parliament, but then after the recounts, things changed. Would it be nice if we could get like other kinds of coverage as well, or more broad coverage, I guess, about what's going on there? But
yeah, but I could probably read this article.
We have settled for the cultural war is forever.
Yeah. Do you wanna read this one, or should I? I think it's worth reading, actually, to get then you can kind of let loose on some of the details, gory details of this election.
Okay, sure. So, Iceland no longer has more female and male MPs after recount. Initial election result gave women 33 seats, but total was later revised down to 30. So, this is just stating the same thing over and over again. Yeah, the initial vote count gave female candidates 3 seats in Iceland's 63-seat parliament, the other thing in an election in which the centrist parties made the biggest gains. The result would have made Iceland the first country in Europe to have more women than men in parliament. So I guess that would have been historical. Not sure if it would have been the first country ever, but, well, I guess it would have been something.
I mean, I want to stop there too, right?
There was a recount. Yeah, and that it's changed the results. And from what I've understood, there have been like recounts elsewhere in the country as well, in several districts. And some of them have been messy.
Yep.
But regarding the actual result, the main takeaways, the Pirate Party kept all of its seats, didn't lose any, didn't gain any. And the left-wing parties took some hits, lost a few. And the ruling right-wing Conservative Party also kept all their seats, no change there. The only one who made any major gains was the agrarian centrist party, I think it's called the Progressive Party there, who gained 5 seats, I think. and they are probably closest to the Centerpartiet in both Sweden and Finland in terms of population. So they're probably going to end up with a fairly similar government coalition as they had last term, or there might not be any major changes.
Probably no major changes is essential, but yeah, the election recounts
is that one of the centrist so-called liberal parties almost fell off. They almost went below the 4%, I think. I can't remember what the exact threshold is, 4 or 5% or something in between. And there was, but eventually they made it. And then there's the freshly founded Socialist Party, which is kind of the new left option for Iceland, that didn't participate in the previous election yet, because I think it didn't exist. So one of the fresh ones, and they almost made it to 4%, but not quite.
And they're the ones that really want a recount, correct?
Yeah, I assume if the recount had changed any of that, we would be learning about it in this article.
Yeah, at least not yet, right? But they're continuing this, right? It turned into kind of a Trumpian mess almost.
Yeah, there were. If I got the right understanding, I heard something about this from my Icelandic pirate contacts. This western district that probably was mentioned here, they went ahead with the recount without following the proper procedure. So it might get contested still. And that one kind of, the recount still, even though it was kind of questionable how it was carried out, it ended up changing the result. Yeah. I think the parties that got in didn't change, but the individual MPs who got the spot.
Yeah, the Pirate Party, it seems, lost a seat. Or at least, maybe didn't lose it, but I like to say here, one candidate whose victory was overturned by the recount was law student Lenya Karim, a 21-year-old daughter of Kurdish immigrants who ran for the anti-establishment Pirate Party. These were a good 9 hours, said Karim.
That's such a shame. Yeah. But after the one recount, there were demands to get recounts in several other districts. I haven't checked in with them yet, but for a couple of days now. But if the recounts were as messy as they sounded, they might still get contested again. Yeah. So there might still be changes to this. It's kind of funny since I guess this makes sense since Iceland is kind of small. It's the size of a small to mid-sized European city. Total population like 350,000 or something. So, and everyone probably know, if you know what city level politics are like.
Yeah,
this might actually make sense. This is the level of nonsense you can come across when it comes to local politics.
But yeah, I mean, well, we'll see what happens there.
And one fun detail about this is that the pirates at least take these things pretty seriously, like the procedure and the controls for the polling and the election in general. And apparently they had requested observers from the OSCE, like international observers, to come in to keep an eye on the election. And the OSCE has refused them, citing lack of necessity. And seeing what ended up happening, maybe it's an interesting choice and interesting reasoning. Oh, you're a Nordic country, like a Nordic first world country, surely you don't need election observers.
Yeah.
Like we gotten to the point in this Nordic welfare state propaganda that even international bodies are doing the complacency for us, which probably isn't good news.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, imagine. Oh God, yeah,
Like,
that's pretty typical.
like we've been saying, we don't have corruption here, we don't have issues here for long enough that the rest of the world actually believes us and is keeping up the myth for us.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge problem. It's like how often isn't Sweden used in some foreign? You know, like look at that's a socialist country. They have strong. This forms our own belief that we actually have a working system at the moment, you know, or that we're in some way socialistic. It's shifting that sort of. I mean, we're living in a neoliberal age. Like, I don't think. I think it's important not to lose that fundamental understanding of where politics has been heading. I mean, the last 50 years, right? I mean, it's the same sort of economic foundational policies that has been forming and upheld the government, the submerged state, and how the state constantly backs up the financial sector, and how these work in tandem. I mean, there's no law of nature that says it has to be like that, and I think it's really important to understand that like, but it's frustrating to see. What about talking about some boars attacking
There's
Rome?
an easy callback to the whole climate activist thing. Some people have been using the word extra parliamentary influence or pressure as somehow being, I don't know, suspect.
Yeah.
Fundamentally. And someone just commented on it that, like, if you're worried about this extra parliamentary influence in politics, wait until you hear about elinkeinoelämä, basically näringslivet.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wait until you hear about the amount of money they're pumping into politics.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's interesting to see how these lobbyists are cooperating, or how quickly that merges with the corporate interests, and how many people are getting sidetracked from where power disseminates through a capitalist society. But anyway, like Boars are attacking Rome. At least we have some form of violent anarchists doing the right thing. Packs of ravenous wild boars are ransacking Rome. My God. Rome has been invaded by Gauls, Visigoths, and Vandals over centuries, but Eternal City is now grappling with a rampaging force, and from an entirely different sort, rubbish-seeking wild boars. Entire families of wild boars have become a daily sight in Rome as groups of 10 to 30 beasts, young and old, emerge from the vast parks surrounding the city to chop down traffic-clogged streets in search for food in Rome's notoriously overflooding rubbish bins. There's so much in this news. Posting wild boar videos on social media has become something of a sport as exasperated Romans capture the scavengers marching past their strollers. As Rome gears up for local election this weekend, the wild boar invasion has been used as a political weapon to attack Mayor Virginia Raggi over the city's formidable garbage collection problems. If you're familiar with the mafia, and quote unquote, let's be a little bit careful here when we use the term mafia, because this is often linked to the unions in very many different ways. So, but this is a pretty good one way of to actually use your power to stop certain things. I mean, it's very important, I think, in general, to use your power to stop certain things. I mean, like if you have a strong garbage collectors union, you can ruin the re-election of a politician. Don't forget that, right? Like that can ruin a politician's future. I think it's just important to know that, like as in this case. But experts say the issue is more complicated and tied to, at least in part, to a booming boar population. Italy's main agriculture lobby, Coldiretti, estimated that there are 2 million wild boars in Italy. The region of Lazio surrounding Rome estimates there are 5,000 to 6,000 of them in city parks, a few hundred of which regularly abandon the trees in green for urban asphalt and trash bins. They are adapting. Nature is doing its job. To combat the growing numbers, Lazio launched a program in 2019 to capture the beasts in park cages for slaughter, and did last month approve a new decree to allow selective hunting of boars in some parks, which until now has been strictly forbidden. Maurizio Gobotti, in charge of Lazio's park, says the region needs to increase the boar cull from 700 to over 2 years to at least 1,000 annually to get the situation under control. Sounds a little bit. In Italy's rural areas, hunting wild boar is a popular sport, and most Italians can offer a long list of their favorite wild boar dishes. Here's a local resident. I'm afraid of walking on the sidewalk because on one side there's these dumpsters full of the rubbish, and the boars jump on me. Said Grazie. I should probably laugh at this, but the whole thing is a little bit absurd. A 79-year-old grandmother waiting outside an elementary school to pick up her grandchild, and she did not give her last name. Okay, worthwhile. Just down the street.
They're always great, like picking individual people from the streets and getting their opinion.
Oh, look at that. That's so cute. I mean, more and more animals are adopting to... like, imagining this. You're getting fucking hunted everywhere, right? Shot off these farmlands that are being completely ruined by pesticides.
Original or natural habitats are getting smaller and smaller, so they have to go into like urban areas to just survive. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to a certain extent, but they're so cute though. Boars can be nasty animals, though. These look so small, though. It feels like a callback to the 50 feral hogs meme. Yeah. But these are probably smaller and these are super small hogs. Less of a threat. Yeah, I mean, these can't... I don't imagine they could actually be dangerous, but if you encounter one here, they could be. There's not a lot, but they could be. There's a little bigger one. What the hell are they gonna do? Anyway, speaking of owning land, a little bit sidetracked. I guess a positive. Actually, we'll get to that. I have some eye bleach. Well, let's take something that's pretty dark. World Health Organization employees took part in Congo's sex abuse during Ebola crisis, report says. Finally, it's been a long fight. This is a recurring thing. International so-called aid organizations, they're just rife with this kind of shit. Like the Red Cross, all of these big names, like the ones you see people gathering donations for in the street. Yeah. Who are supposed to be the good guys and in disaster areas. Yeah. And it's often incredibly hard to even get the United Nations or World Health Organization or whoever to even listen to a case, to even investigate so properly, right? So this is one of those cases where this have been done, and in Congo, then 21 workers of the World Health Organization in Congo have been accused of sexually abusing people during an Ebola outbreak. Like, I mean, let alone the fact. I mean, I don't even know where to start. WHO Commissioner panel said Tuesday in a report that identified 83 alleged perpetrators connected to the 2018-2020 mission. The panel released its finding months after Associated Press investigation found senior WHO managers was informed of multiple abuse claims in 2019, but failed to stop the harassment and even promoted one of the managers involved. Like, this is normally the reason why this is not even talked about, right? This is like a part of the system. Like, this is a colonialism in action, right? I mean, the democratic way of continuing different forms of oppression. This is the biggest finding of sexual abuse perpetrated during a single UN initiative in one area or one country during the time-bound period of a UN response effort. Listen to how many clauses they have to throw in there to even make this be a sound like an historic thing. Said Paula Donovan, co-director of the Code Blue campaign, which is campaigning to end sexual exploitation by UN peacekeepers. I mean, note that there is a Code Blue campaign. Can you imagine? Panel member Malik Kolabili said investigators uncovered a total of 9 rape allegations. The women interviewed say their attackers used no birth control, resulting in some pregnancies. Some women said the rapists had forced them to have abortions.
The youngest of the victims, identified in the report only as Jolian and believed to be 13, recounted that a VHO driver stopped on roadside in the town of Mangina, where she was selling phone cards in 2019 and offered to give him a ride home. I'm not really sure we need to read that. You can imagine rape, and that's pretty much that. And also, I don't know. I tend to follow these news. I worked as a volunteer in when I was young, 20 years of age. I went to Tanzania to do that, and it was astounding to see how the missionaries down there lived. A lot of them employed by these type of organizations in gated communities. Their kids were playing horse polo in their breaks. They could have been there for 10 years, didn't even speak the language, right? It's like to me, just completely fucking insane, right? And just a general disregard, like racist, right? Just pretty blatant racism, right? Wherever you went. Like, I was not even allowed to hang out with them after it turned out that I had a lot of, after, like, me bringing African friends to some place, Like, it's just ongoing, right? And this is a systematic issue in a lot of these organizations that work down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a systematic issue in whole society here.
Yes.
There as well, but there are so many power structures in play in this that it gets really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and
the more there's like unaccountability and lack of transparency, the higher, like the steeper the hierarchies are, the more you get this kind of thing.
Yeah.
You end up with structures that specifically enable abuses of power. Like this and
also the sort of self-righteous type of racism that comes with that, and it's often kind of apparent when you're talking to people. Like, try talking to someone who's been in South Africa for long. Right? It's pretty goddamn. It's incredible, some of the things that are down there, and also the way that people are dealing with this. Okay, Kenta. I think there is more to that. Regardless of what, it's good at least to see that it's even being reported and even actually becoming a case, because normally these just get shut down by the higher ups. And it's worth to note that for anyone to check, I'd recommend you to dig into the what are they called, anyway, the reports on Syria using gas on their own populations and what happened there in the UN report, and some of the stuff, because that was actually also brought up, and it was not widely reported in media, but there is hilarious turns in that story. And actually, because it was actually brought up to the UN, the UN ambassadors for UK, France, and US had to respond. They were forced to actually respond to allegations of falsifying these reports, and the responses are quite revealing. And this was a report handed in them by people that worked on these cases, and they're saying that that's not the report that we didn't say that we said that this looks like a false flag attack. Like, what are you publishing? Wait, what? So there's also underreported story, let's say the least. I mean, we went to war over that, right? We bombed the shit out of Syria, and that's, if you're interested in the immigration and politics, you should probably be interested in that, right? There's our destabilizing efforts ain't really helping your case if you want to lessen immigration, right? Let's put it like that, maybe.
Yeah, and then people wonder why there's like anti-Western sentiment.
Yeah, exactly.
World.
you bombed. I mean, just look at that last little gift Hellfire missile that was sent into Afghanistan, right? I mean, you wonder why don't they want us to come and liberate us?
Why aren't they grateful for the handouts we've been giving them?
Yeah, exactly. Why we have so much? We have all of these great organizations on place that absolutely does not rape their women, you know, or like it's yeah, no good. Let's at least maybe we shouldn't go too long tonight either. We need some. I need some eye wash. I think it was here somewhere.
Definitely.
Oh, hang on. It's here. This is useful. If I had a dog, this is how I would. I'm not going out, dog. Walk. How is he running? Oh. That's like trotting dog. Oh, and in Sweden, this is Sweden is opening. And this is exactly how I'm going to be celebrating. In just a couple of, actually in 1 hour and a half. Check this out. That's exactly what's going to change in Sweden. That's how my life is going to change.
Are you going to have like a thematic stream to celebrate it?
Nah, yeah, oh no, yeah, I'm gonna be sleeping probably, that's true. Maybe I'm gonna set up a little bit. I'll fire off some fireworks in Final Fantasy. That's how I'm gonna celebrate it. I'm not even gonna do it in real life. That's it. But some students...
That's kind of weird though, since we haven't had any like big fanfare. We're just... Like Finland has had these gradual removals of the restrictions. Like they're gradually changing the laws or just the recommendations. It's bit by bit, and there hasn't been like big show made out of it.
No, Sweden has made a big show out of this one.
I was in Sweden in August. Like nobody was wearing a mask. Everything seemed very normal compared to to Finland. So
I think the big thing is that clubs have been. I'm not gonna say closed because that's not true. But there has been some stricter restrictions on, you know, can you sit close to each other? No. Clubs, nightclubs, I think some of them have gotten their licenses revoked after being dangerous. But I mean, it's just completely blown out of proportion. There hasn't really been anything for some reason. Now it's like this is the huge thing. At least I think the nations like were close. So this is in Uppsala, people preparing for tonight's parties there. Pretty long line. Think this. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, though, if it has any effects. I mean, I think these bigger gatherings, like, you know, like a big rock show, some big festival, it's completely normal again. Those have been, you haven't been able to do that. The super spreader type of situations have been banned, right? But I don't think, can you do that in Finland right now? Like, can you go to a club and with a, you know, hot steaming kind of dance floor, or is that going to be a little bit frowned upon, or at least, or maybe even dangerous for the club to have because they may get shut down? Are you muted?
Yeah, sorry.
You gotta focus. God damn it.
Sorry. I found some good news.
Okay, good news. We need good news. Anyway, we'll see what happens to Sweden, how it opens up. But how is Finland? It's like, can you go to clubs and all of that stuff, or what's?
Yeah, most of it has been, like, there are some restrictions to how many people can participate in closed, like, if it's a closed area or indoors, there are some restrictions, or at least some requirements for the organizers to keep track of who was there. But I'm judging by the fact that there hasn't been like a constant shit show on the media about the government killing all the small entrepreneurs, that some kind of an agreement has been, or some kind of a truce has been reached. Like, that's what I'm using as a measurement, since I don't really go to the kind of events that that have been like
Yeah.
majorly affected by Corona.
I think it's celebrating that there is supposedly no restrictions. You are just supposed to be smarter than doing what these people are doing. Because the general restrictions still apply, which is don't be too close to anyone, like all of that stuff. So I guess, seeing this is not that positive, right? Like, I completely fucking understand it, right?
To have this big opening up party and then have to close down again in a month or so.
Yep.
And to just stay closed up all the time.
That's what's going to happen. It's like we release all of this with the hope that you understand that you shouldn't be close to each other, right? Good luck with that. It's so stupid. Whatever. We'll see what happens. Hopefully the young people are vaccinated, which also the figures show in Sweden that they are typically not.
Yeah, but the last one, I just added it.
Ooh. Last positive news. Oh my god, they have green hair! They're employed by Soros!
Obviously. Every single teenager in the world with dyed hair, they are directly funded, like they mail these packages of hair dye by Soros.
Yeah. And this is actually EU.
Apparently, the EU has been getting its shit together a bit.
Yeah.
And trying to enforce this rule of law and just their general principles.
Yeah, maybe not oppress people if you want money.
Scrambling over themselves to junk resolutions denouncing what they called LGBT propaganda after facing the threat of losing billions in EU funding. Billions and billions.
Mm-hmm. The resolutions were adopted in 2019-2020 by regional governments controlled by Poland's ruling nationalist coalition led by the Law and Justice Party. It was a part of a wave of anti-LGBTQ+ sentiment created by the ruling party in an effort to boost its support in parliamentary and presidential elections. In the resolution adopted in the eastern region of Lubelske, for example, the regional government talked about LGBT ideology and homo propaganda juxtaposed against Christian values. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, there must be some kind of if there isn't a glossary of all these terms they have come up with to describe this threat by the LGBTQ, someone must be keeping track of all the terms they come up with, since this is, again, a new one. Like, I've heard global homo and the gay agenda and all of that.
Of course.
Homo propaganda.
It's very important for this type of nationalist government to have the freedom to oppress people, right?
Yep.
It's very important that I'm free to make sure you can never get married, to make sure you cannot and also that I can't discriminate you just because of your sexuality, and say that loudly. That's very important. It's my freedom to be able to. That's essentially it. And but luckily, finally, EU has done something. This has been such a fucked up situation. Looking at where EU is just, well.
Yeah, it isn't. They don't use the words in the beginning of the article or in the headline, but this is specifically about the so-called LGBT free zones. Like, that's what hit the headlines at this year. So that's what we have heard before, like the LGBT free zones.
What the fuck did they even mean with that?
There were just regions and municipalities that declare that they are LGBT. I don't know. That shit doesn't fly here. They just. I think they were mostly symbolic, but there might have been some like practical policies tied to it as well. Maybe something related to schools.
You couldn't fly the flag. You couldn't talk. You couldn't hold hands. What? That's the problem, right?
Yeah, it was. Even if it's just a general pronouncement, it's still a signal from the authorities that say hate crime won't be necessarily be taken as seriously as it should be. So even if there weren't actual policies tied to it, it was still a problem.
I mean, listen,
that's true. There has been very little reporting on what this actually entailed, like this declaring an area to be a LGBT free zone.
I mean, it's funny. The retreat is backed by PS, which fears public backlash for losing EU money at the time when it's eyeing a snap election. But listen, we appeal to regional councils not to succumb to blackmail. If someone is counting on the European Union to stop, they're wrong. We can expect more unlawful actions if we succumb to this kind of economic terrorism. Oh my God, we're not getting the EU money if we don't follow, if we discriminate against minorities. Oh my God, like, don't take the money and get the fuck out of the European Union. Do a fucking Brexit, you know? Have some goddamn... I mean, this is such a two-side face of talking about this shit. God damn it.
Really happy to get the money, but they don't really like to do what everyone else tends to have to do in order to get any of that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Kenta, maybe you could inform. What is it that you want to be free from in these spaces? Like, I think that's the question here. Like, what is it that you do not want to see in these spaces? Is it people liking each other, maybe holding hands? Like, is it people who are dressing a little bit differently than you want? Like, I mean, I think that's always the fun, because it's often being framed as this is in some way rational, right? And that's what really pisses me off. Anyway.
Also, out of all the possible problems with the EU as an institution, like, these are the hills they choose to die on, apparently.
Yeah.
The LGBTQ stuff.
Exactly. I mean, it says so much about Poland to a certain degree. Well, I think that's about it. Let's see if we have something that's easy and fast and. Oh no, that's too. I don't want to think about that. No, I think that's it. This is a big story we should talk about and dig in. Top Christian pages were run by foreign troll farms. They've done a pretty deep dig in there. It's not really news, but it's interesting.
Yeah, there's been a lot on Facebook recently.
Yeah.
Like, tons of leaks of nothing new, really. Just them being aware of a lot of bad things about how the services work and what they do.
Okay, I guess they don't finance okay, so that's what you would want, like that the local government doesn't participate in local celebrations, right? I mean, I can actually find that pretty fair, to the extent that it actually happens, but it's also completely blown out of proportion every single time this is being talked about.
So it's an extra statement to do this kind of principled announcement that to be anti-LGBT. Like, there's tons of places, like we have tons of municipalities in Finland that vote on whether they can put up the rainbow flag during Pride Week, like once a year, and they still get voted down on that. And they don't, like, they do that, but they also don't feel the need to announce themselves to be anti-LGBT.
Yeah,
as an area.
I mean, but
I feel like degrees there.
I think it's fair. I think you could say like this: the government. I mean, then you have to do the hard line. The government, the local government, should not support any sort of celebration of any kind in this, whether it's a national holiday, you know, whether it's a Christian tradition, you gotta stop all of them to a certain extent, like and not be a part of them. Period. And then, you know, depend on that the people arrange them, right? I mean, not stand in their ways when they're happening, and also that means that when there is a Pride festival, there's gonna be a lot of Pride flags, and there's nothing you can do for that or against it, right? Like, I mean, I think there is a point to have there, but you gotta apply these things pretty. You gotta be stringent with that. Then,
like a lot of just traditions and cultural events can, if you really want to, like go into that, you can reduce them to being like some kind of identitarian nonsense, basically.
oh yeah,
Like even the like the local cultural, the local tradition stuff. Like you can stay pure with your terminology and say that that's just like silly identity politics. Just
I mean,
get on with the show. Like forget about that. Like why do you care so much? Why do you want to shove that in our faces?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. I mean, everything is political. I mean, and that's kind of the case. If you feel all of a sudden that celebrating or being happy about and talking about the rights of a minority that have been traditionally incredibly oppressed, several different kind of groups of minorities that have been incredibly oppressed. If you think that that's, you know, is that seriously the hill you want to die on again? Like, is like how goddamn short-sighted.
People have always existed, and they're just as much part of the local community.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty strong. But I mean, I could argue, at least, you know, in theory, for the fact that the government shouldn't be involved in any of those. But I don't think, and that's kind of the thing, I honestly don't think the conservatives are gonna like that particularly much, in a lot of places. I think that's
about whether these things should be the stuff they don't like.
Yeah, I mean it always is, and it's just never applied in a way where it's reasonable. The reason, okay, yeah, I'm not going to go through that at the moment, but I think it, like, to be honest, I mean, if you look at the European Union, it grew way too fast, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of countries there that just shouldn't have been a part of the Union to start with, and that's just the way I see it. Like, they aren't really politically happy in there, and it's being used as a scapegoat. You could hope that UK kind of wakes up from the complete mess they've created, but I mean, I doubt it.
No, they're just going to keep digging. It's never their fault.
Yeah. Regardless of what.
Yeah, what's going in the UK might be kind of a preview of what a lot of the rest of the world is in for in these next few years.
Yeah.
We don't get serious about climate mitigation and adaptation. Like they've had to mobilize the military to get the fuel.
We didn't even talk about. Let's take that one. Wait, it's not here. Well, that's a sad news. I had it some. Wait, I had somewhere here. Oh, this is so stupid. That's a good. Oh, okay. Yeah, here it is.
One? Yeah, there's one from Deutsche Welle, I think.
Yeah, that's probably better. This is just a short one. British Army to start driving tankers. Fuel queues persist. Britain orders soldiers on Wednesday to start driving fuel tankers to replenish empty pumps as motorists remain mired in queues after nearly a week of shortages. I mean, well, I mean, all of these are solvable things, but that sort of growing nationalism definitely Yeah, I mean, this is fuel, so it's
just like when there's no other way to keep these basic functions running, the military has to step in.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just...
Oh, that's one of the last resort tools that the government has at their disposal to deal with these kinds of exceptional circumstances, which might in the near future not be all that exceptional.
No, it's not. And I mean, it's really sad to see. I don't know. It's...
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people in Britain who didn't ask for this. So I've never been much for like making fun of like Britons or just all the different there are different nationalities. You could go through them in the UK, but still, like, I've not been one for making fun of them as a people, since many of them didn't choose this.
Kanda says there lacks 100,000 chauffeurs. I think that was the total. I heard that something as like they need at least 25,000 drivers. But this is particularly regarding fuel. I'm not sure why fuel is a problem at the moment.
They've been having supply chain issues for everything, and labor deficiencies for everything. So this is just one, like the last one in the long line of...
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, the reality is spoiled majorities...
The 100,000 might not even be too far off, since, for instance, like the UK is dependent... really dependent on imported food, for instance. They're very far from food sovereign. So just to get their food in, they need a ton of imports from Europe. And it's mostly like, I mean, a lot of it comes in on trucks.
Yep, and but I mean, at a certain extent, there's a positive spin on this, which is, I mean, they're going to force to raise the salaries of this, which is going to increase the costs of all of the products, which, I mean, to a certain extent, what it can show, if now for whatever reason, you can't show solidarity because these are parent foreigners, you know, you're okay on living your life, stepping on these people and just ignoring them and blaming them for taking their jobs, and then you don't want to take those jobs because they pay too bad, then at least there is a reality check, and maybe some workers or, you know, that type of organization could be more prominent again. Like, I don't know, what else?
Text, well, literally at the like final major point of like state intervention. This isn't the market solving anything anymore. This is like
the
market's being unable enough to solve these things that they have to bring the military in.
Yeah, and it's more than that. I mean, you're ending in that sort of submerged state that we talked about, like lull the people into thinking that they are rich, you know, that they can afford this sort of life. Let them take debts. Don't ever disturb them. Don't risk losing. I mean, the crash is going to be so hard. Like most of these people, the middle class, whatever we call them, that's just a lie. They're shit ass poor when it comes down to it. Like if they can't depend on other people working for slave salaries in their eyes, you know, or be able to compete at that level, or, you know, can't import things in a way that kind of that is governmentally subsidized, like our fucking farming or whatever, then they're fucked.
Just the human side of the equation, like this is fuel, this is fossil energy.
Yeah.
This is actually scary part. These labor things, if someone up there just comes to their senses, they can start fixing the wages and making decisions to even things out. But the fundamental structures of our societies right now, like globally, we are entirely dependent on this cheap fossil fuel.
Yeah.
That's really efficient, but it just has some very unfortunate side effects that we can't live with much longer. So the real scary part here is that the basics rely on this on fossil fuels so heavily that it doesn't take that much for these exceptional measures to be called.
Yeah. Well, with those words,
this is also bad news for the. I mean, if we were far enough along the transition to something more sustainable, getting like rid of our dependency on fossil fuels, this wouldn't be as much of an issue. Like, things wouldn't get fucked up really quickly if we run out of fuel for a bit, or are a bit low on fuel for a bit, because we would have alternatives. Our energy infrastructure wouldn't be as reliant. All of our everything wouldn't be as reliant on fossil fuels as it is right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's the hard part.
I mean, being on the side of that industry, there's just I don't think there's any excuse for that type of stupidity. I mean, no matter what political leanings you have, you got to be completely fucking brainwashed to think that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, I guess it's an abusive relationship or something.
It's a very abusive relationship. Speaking of abusive relationships, we're gonna see if we can raid Myra again. I think she's still streaming. They've been playing, that's gonna be in Swedish though, but they're playing Indiana Jones. I'm not sure if they're still streaming. We'll find out. And we will be back next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And tomorrow is Thursday, am I right? Jeez. Yeah, it's Thursday. That makes sense. Tomorrow is nothing special day, actually. We'll see what we do tomorrow. Maybe we're going to work on the song. Why not? And that's it. Sleep.
Still some questions in the chat. I'm not that deep into British politics that I just I can't answer that question about the reactions of the Brexiters, but based on how things have been going everywhere else, I would imagine that they're going down the same anti-vax, corona denialist rabbit holes that the rest of the reactionaries across the world have been going.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental problem is the same as in the US, right? Even though a lot of people do change their mind, at least they realize that's a stupid idea, the political opposition to that is not helping them either, right? I mean, there is no one that is actually trying to help these people or actually doing something that could, release them in a way, or at least make them feel some form of hope for the future as their cities and towns are declining, It's like a slow death of a lot of these places, and people are losing their jobs and their salaries ain't increasing, and their kids are, it's the same rut, and it's just slowly feel that slow feeling of it getting worse and worse and worse. So, the Democrats right now, they're not even able to pass a $3.5 trillion bill over 10 years with pretty mild things in it, which is just let's reduce the price on medicine, right? Let's do some mild climate positive politics. Let's boost, really things that are non-controversial, and the Democrats are fucking it up. That's failing now. And this is the only window they have to do it, because there's election.
Yeah.
Soon again.
This is something the IPCC leak also spelled out. There's no time anymore for incrementalism. Incremental makes us lose the game.
Yeah. And this isn't even that's an incremental bill that even that can't be passed, right? Which just completely demoralizes again. And then what's the option? Well, it's fascism, right? And people won't go vote. That's the reality in the US. I don't think, no matter how you try to scare people for Trump, people are just not going to vote Democrat again. So many young people are getting disillusionized yet again, right?
Yeah, these climate movements are part of that. That's how it's one of the ways it's getting channeled, the frustration and just incredulity the disillusionment of young people.
Yeah.
They see that none of this makes sense and nobody's doing anything to solve the actual issues. Like young people aren't stupid; they are blind. I mean, sorry, that's not a word. Probably not words I should be using, but like they can tell something is going on. They understand more than most people give them credit for.
Yeah, and we have a completely new information system that young people know how to use and how to get the information from, which is relatively new as well. So that type of corruption, like when Cinema, who is blocking this bill, is going out and getting money. Like in this, she just right now, I think 2 days ago, she went and had a fundraiser with Big Pharma. With people who are essentially opposing that bill. She's a Democrat. You know, when the media is going out and saying that that bill is a left fringe idea, when it's Biden's proposal, when it's the fucking president's proposal.
It's a good time for us to wind down since you're veering off into US politics.
Yeah, whatever. Sorry. Yeah, but that's horrible. And it's happening all over.
We don't have an anti-LGBT zone here. We have a US politics-free zone here.
That's true.
That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Dear friends, we'll see you tomorrow. And yeah, next week.
I'll hopefully see you guys next week.
Next week.
The Czech election is coming up next week.
Oh, right, yeah.
It might be kind of a struggle to find anyone to come on the show at this point, but maybe we can do some digging and actually have some informed insider takes.
We could invite René.
Like
he was born there. That's going to be controversial.
Who was? René?
René, yeah.
Oh, no.
That reaction.
Doesn't he get enough screen time?
No, wait. René can't have much screen time.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, we're decolonizing this.
Yeah.
At least de-anglicizing this. One bit at a time. Maybe one day we won't even be speaking English here.
Who knows? We have to invent our own European language.
Maybe we'll actually have to set up the sub goal that once we get to it, I'm going to do an entire stream in Swedish or something.
Yeah, that's true. We need to have a goal.
It's going to be so painful, but yeah.
Yeah. Dear friends, see you tomorrow. Sleep tight.
PTV, oberoende, piratistisk media, skapad och finansierad av tittarna.